Alright, so you guys have been dying, absolutely dying, for a video on Madness Combat, which has an absurdly complicated story, so, thought it'd be fun to talk about it. Ended up being a lot longer than I thought. The script is literally 11 pages long, but the last page kind of is like a little snippet of a paragraph, but still, it's a long script. We're going to be going through every single animation, 1 through 12, including the stuff in between, the .5s, Dissenter, Deadmos' Adventure, everything. I wanted to fully cover it and try to understand it. I mean, it is still a very hard to understand story, but I just wanted to try. Just know that I might get things wrong, because a lot of the details are kind of revealed in Crinkle's streams, and if you, personally talk to him, and it's hard to find a lot of those little bits and pieces. I didn't watch any other video because I did not want to try and plagiarize any other video as well. So, there are other videos, and if you want, totally check those out. I think you should check all these other creators out. They're all cool. And, I'll try going over everything that's canonical. And, I just really hope you guys enjoy this one. This one took a while to make. Alright, honestly, first two Madness Combat animations are pretty self-explanatory, so I'm going to group them together. Basically, Madness 1, dude, Hank, doesn't like music on the beatbox, beats up people. Jesus makes some zombies, dies, and then Hank wins and does a little, Fortnite gritty or something. I don't really know. It's pretty straightforward, and nothing really... I'll just say this. This is the only time you'll ever see a tree in Madness, and because the entire story takes place in Nevada, this is the only tree you'll ever see. Just a fun fact. Anyways, Madness 2 takes place maybe a day or two later. Hank wants to kill someone named the Sheriff, and the only reason I can imagine Hank wanting to kill the Sheriff is because he has something special that I'll talk about later, or just because maybe he's a bad guy. I don't really know. Anyways, he tracks him down to this compound of sorts and raids it, killing all of these dudes, and then eventually meets Jesus again, who will summon more zombies, and eventually gets face to face with the Sheriff after temporarily pushing away Jesus. But right as he has his guns pointed at the Sheriff, Jesus ends up killing him. And that's going to be the first of many deaths, and that is how Madness 2 ends. Alright, so Madness 3, despite dying, Hank is back, but we see a bandage around where he was, hurt in the head. It's where his bullet was, and now there's bandages there. We'll be talking more about his revivals later when you can really fully grasp it, because it will get kind of complicated. It gets very complicated. But anyways, just like Madness 2, he's going to kill the Sheriff, infiltrates another compound, starts killing people. It's just Madness as usual. But then, however, the Sheriff is seen with something called the improbability drive. This single button that he presses will literally be the entire series and the whole reason it's continuing. This is one of the most critical moments in the entire series, and not many people really talk about it. Everyone's like, oh my god, it started because of a boombox, blah blah blah. No, it is this moment when he presses the button is the entire reason the story will end up being the way it is. You see, what he's about to press will cause the entire state of Nevada to basically go into pure pandemonium. It goes into pure chaos. So he presses this button and things start getting wacky, room falls apart, people are flying, and now there's this clown named Tricky, who will be very important, and he's flying with a jetpack with an M6 and he's do, and then, blah blah blah, they fight. And, it's just a really goofy, the improbability drive here is more goofy, and, another thing is that Hank even kills the sun who comes down. I guess he worked for the Sheriff too, so, he kills the sun, and now it's pitch black. You will never see normal light in Madness ever again. So, you get the idea. Kills everyone. And he's going through all these crazy fights, and he, at one point, hurts Tricky, and Tricky ends up getting impaled to the stop sign, pretty important for later, and, anyways, more fighting later, Jesus, zombies again, and then he finally meets the Sheriff again, and just like the last time, right before he kills the Sheriff, he's basically hurt really badly by Jesus by getting impaled in the stomach with a sword, but unlike last time, he would still live, shoot Jesus, and then the Sheriff, and then also die himself, and you'd think Madness is over, but no, Hank still has missions to continue, I guess. Alright, Madness 4. Honestly, an absolute banger, and I really like this one a lot, even if it's still old and it obviously shows its age, and has a bunch of really cool improvements animation-wise. It's a really nice jump in quality. I think it's absolutely great. There are a few important things to note. We start seeing posters in the background for a bandaged Hank, which is, okay, so that's interesting, right? Because the people shouldn't know that he's coming back, right? He's dead. How do they know what his new form looks like? Meaning that apparently every time that Hank dies, he's resurrected in such an obnoxious way that they know when he's resurrected and immediately knows what he looks like, or they get a notification on their phone maybe. Well, phones I don't even think existed in 2004 4. Like, you could get photos that good. So I honestly don't know how they're able to know what Hank looks like before he even shows up. But anyways, yeah, there's also a poster called The Sheriff Like Wants You, and it's like Uncle Sam propaganda, and that means they probably don't know that the sheriff is dead yet, or haven't had time to update these posters, because obviously if the leader of a, you know, country dies, everyone knows, and that's what would happen with the sheriff, meaning that this probably only takes place like a day or so after the first. Anyways, final poster, Club M. It's just going to be a main point later, and it also has Cheshire. And this is basically what I'm trying to say is, Cheshire is the guy who will start doing music from now on forever for Madness. And yeah, just a little hint to him, a little nudge nudge. And then Tricky's also the DJ at this club, Club Madness probably it's called. And yeah, he just wanted to point out Cheshire. Anyways, yeah, blah blah blah, Hank drives into people, fight stuff, and eventually he comes across a grunt with a suit and sunglasses. These are Leet agents, and also known as, well, 1337 agents, which is Leet speak for elite. If you don't know what Leet speak is, it's a very ancient kind of like language of sorts that people on the internet used to speak to each other in. It's like super old, like early internet stuff, you know, and I guess that really shows how old this is. Anyways, these agents are improved agents who are stronger and more powerful, have more brain power, I guess, and have more, I guess, combat capabilities. But despite being stronger and stuff, this one dude only hits Hank like once with a weak punch, and then he dies. There are also, I think, posters in the background, or I think that might be the next one for these Leet agents. I don't really know. I forgot which one it was. But yeah, more fighting. Eventually, Hank reaches Club M, and Tricky the Clown is like totally playing his music. You know, I love the song from Apotheosis, Madness 4. And then he shoots Tricky, and everyone's like, bro, why would you do that? And then Tricky's still alive, turns out, because he's a zombie, so who would have guessed? And then everyone gangs up on Hank, except this one dude. He's like, he doesn't want to fight. So he just watches like this absolute banger of a fight scene go out. I always like this one a lot. I think it's super well animated, even if it's, again, very old. But he basically watches them fight and then eventually gets hit by a door, because then Jesus is back. Oh no, Jesus is back. And then, yeah, he just revives everyone as zombies. Hank fights them again. Hank is hurt by a zombie Leet agent when deflecting bullets, but apparently he did that on purpose just to flex how good he was with a sword, and then do like this cool like thing. You'll see it in just a sec. And then, yeah, and then right before he dies, you know, Jesus shoots him a bit, then he pulls out a detonator, and I guess he just ate a whole ass bomb because he just explodes spontaneously. And I guess Tricky just sits there and starts busting a move, you know? So yeah, that's Madness 4. Alright, Madness 5. Pretty simple as well. Hank is back wearing clothes and stuff because his body got like super bandaged up, and so he probably had to wear clothes to hide all the bandages. And yeah, so now he has, I guess, I don't know, I guess bandages are like a metaphor for revival. Anyways, yeah, now most of the grunts are Leet agents, so yeah, he kills a bunch of those guys, meets Jesus again, zombie fight, blah blah blah, giant red ball. Oh yeah, giant red ball, that's really weird. What? Wait, what is that? So you remember how the sun got killed, right? Well, I guess that's your new sun. That's what gives the sunlight to the world. So yeah, anyways, fighting Jesus, blah blah blah. Tricky's back now, but with a stop sign, remember, from Madness 3, but Hank shoots him really quick before going back to fighting, and then everything glitches out. Tricky is shown to be, quote, compromising reality, and that the clown has, quote, been engaged. He basically beats up Hank and flings him way up out of this pit. Then these two important guys give him a sword and is like, go kick his ass, Hank, come on, go beat his ass, before driving backwards and then a giant house falls on them. These two, again, are very important. I'll explain them in just a bit. Anyways, it's revealed that he decapitated Jesus, and then, you know, Tricky is just holding his head. It's kind of gross, actually. And then he fights Hank. You know, it's a hard fight, but Hank barely wins when he cuts Tricky, like, the top half of his head off. But then Tricky, I guess, was just, like, low-key trolling, and then comes back up, takes Hank's head off, and just mashes it into the ground, and then just is like, yippee! So yeah, that's all of Madness 5, I guess. Alright, so now we're gonna go on to Madness 5.5, and this is where explaining things kind of gets a bit hard for me, because, you see, after Madness 9 would come out, Crinkles would basically go back to 5 and then make a bunch of little in-between animations to explain the story of two very important characters. I mean, they're so important that they have like entire animations dedicated to just them. These two are Sanford and Deimos, and their little story we get to watch is like kind of followed throughout these .5s as everything else is going on in the background. So yeah, basically, we get to watch what leads up to Madness 9 through their story. Just know that, again, these came out way later, and so a lot of things are going to get revealed now that are like, what? And then they're going to like be like, and they're going to have a big reveal later, but you're going to be like, but we already know them. But again, that's just because they were revealed way later. This was already made when all of those things were kind of like accepted, so yeah, just keep that in mind. Alright, so we basically follow the two guys who helped Hank. Their mission was to help him, and then they ended up getting, you know, they get hit by the house. But instead of dying, they survived, and we get a bit more insight into some stuff. You know, for example, like how I guess things are changing in the background. I'll explain that more though. So for reference, by the way, the one with the larger ruin on their head is Sanford, and the one with the smaller one is Deimos. Anyways, so here are the important things. We start seeing a strange new force take over. This guy's the Auditor, and honestly, he is more important for later, but just know he's going to start showing up now, and he's going to be starting to take over, I guess, the group, and I'll talk about that later in Madness 6. So there's also new characters that are being, I guess, like, foreshadowed, called ATP Engineers. Now, these guys do not actually officially show up until the end of Madness 7 and basically the start of, the very end of Madness 7. These ATP Engineers are advanced like accelerated training program, and like they're basically, I'll talk more about how they're made, but they're genetically modified and have yellow blood, and that's all, honestly. Most of Madness 5.5, if you really had to explain it, is just a lot of fighting and surviving. And apparently Tricky tried using the top half of Jesus' head from Madness 5 to get stronger, but that didn't work out. Anyways, more fighting, and then suddenly train tracks appear, and a train is about to run into them. This is important for later, but not really for now. Anyways, they dodge it, and then are suddenly ambushed by an ATP engineer, and then it ends on a cliffhanger because he shoots one of them. Again, the first time that ATP engineers actually show up is like way later, but just again, release dates are kind of weird and all that. Alright, so Madness 6. This takes place like probably a few minutes after Madness 5 and 5.5, and probably a few minutes after. It's like taking place during 5.5 a little bit. It's kind of hard to explain, but takes place basically a few minutes after 5, and we literally get to see Hank get resurrected. He glows, and then boom, he's back, and now he has a metal jaw because it symbolizes where he got hurt last time. Anyway, so how did he just glow and come back? Well, there's this character in the game, the Project Nexus, the 3D one, called the Machine, and, I'm not gonna get into Nexus, that I don't even know how to describe that, but we just know that he's the one reviving Hank, and he's gonna be making a lot more important decisions later on. I'm really unsure about what he really does, and he's quite mysterious. Nobody knows who they really are, but there are a lot of theories, and it's just kind of a mystery. Anyways, Hank is left a note from Tricky to just do bad things, and he's given a knife and a gun. Hank goes in a building, begins fighting, and you'll notice that there are two important posters. One shows that the agency against Hank Wimbledon has officially been established, and while it's not shown, it's by the Auditor person, and you don't really know about them too much, but the reason this exists is because they want to stop Hank, and why, I cannot tell you, but they're at least trying to do something to stop him. Anyways, the other important one was that there are apparently already wanted posters updating Hank getting revived, which, mind you, was just in the span of a few minutes. He has been revived, and I'll explain that later, but he has already been revived, and these people are all like, shoot, he's back? Alright, time to make entirely new posters and stuff like that, so I don't know how they did that. Anyways, yeah, Hank goes around killing new elite agents with like a slight red tint in their glasses, meaning something changed about them. I'll explain that later. Anyways, yeah, blah, blah, blah. He kills people, it's killing. It's pretty cool until he reaches a room with the original improbability drive. The improbability drive here, honestly, should just be ignored as, it kind of gets retconned later. Funny enough, I'll get into it when it matters, but suddenly, a train approaches Hank, a train being run by Tricky. Remember that train from Madness 5.5? This is that same train. So if you really think about it, this takes place like 4 minutes after Madness. Again, this is like freaking definitive proof that this takes place like right after Madness 5, so yeah. Anyways, Hank is like, grabs onto the train, and begins to like fight on it, and it looks so cool. I always like this one a lot. It just looks really cool. Anyways, he eventually reaches the conductor, Tricky, and Tricky's like, get off my train, and then they both fall off as the tracks end, and then they have this 1v1. So I ended up realizing something while editing. Tricky actually probably was the one reviving Hank. I totally forgot about the one scene in Madness 6 where Tricky revives Hank for a fight. And so it's very likely that ever since 3 he has been just reviving Hank, but we don't really see him put any bandages on him or anything either. I don't really know. I feel like his revival here is more for like maybe to explain like why he was revived once. So we don't really know how much Tricky has been doing this, because he probably could have done it just for 6 maybe. We just really don't know. It's hard to say Tricky's revival abilities and what they really are. I just thought I'd mention it. I totally forgot to bring it up. And yeah, I don't think he revives Hank in 7. I'll touch upon that later though, because it doesn't look the same as him glowing, trust me. Which is then interrupted by a building falling, and Hank has to fight through it. More fighting it. Oh, Hank, dude, what happened to your feet? Oh no, oh no. Yeah, so apparently Hank's feet are behind this one body. And when Crinkles was animating this, he forgot to actually freaking like animate his feet again. And this is in the official version. You can watch it for yourself. This is the official version. But thank God. Oh, he gets them back. Phew. Okay. So he quickly beats up Tricky, who's ordering a hot dog with an axe and a P90, but Tricky doesn't die. Instead, a bunch of flashes on screen happen, like a bunch of text, and he's revived into a demon form. And the animation basically ends on Hank being right about to beat his ass. Up. We're gonna have to stop right there. Before we can continue, we have to go back to Madness 6.5. You know, the 0.5 series? Yep, we gotta go back there. And we follow Deimos and Sanford again. Turns out the engineer shot Sanford, but luckily he survives, and they fight and stuff. And then he tends to his wounds and takes an adrenaline shot. A nice little detail here is the score. You know, I'm a sucker for score if you watch my freaking Killer 7 video. As he takes the adrenaline shot, Cheshire, yes, the guy who makes all the music, remember him, made it so that the music ramps up back into the more intense version, rather this more ambient and kind of background-y theme. It's really cool. Check it out. Anyways, so they fight, and eventually, you know, Jesus gets his head back, I guess it cuts to him, and he decides he's done working for the agency against Hank Wimbledon. He is done. And he leaves a little note, which is important for later, and he's probably just tired of Tricky, who kind of seems to be unpredictable, like a rogue agent. So yeah, the auditor sees this, and then checks on other stuff. He looks at a screen where he can see Tricky spamming him. He sees Hank getting revived live, and also how, I guess, he's upgrading Lee agents again, remotely, like it's a balloon tower defense game or something. I don't know how he does this, but yeah. Anyways, another thing that we see is Tricky has something called the third drive, in reference to the improbability drive. It won't matter too much yet, but I'll explain it more in like a later animation, the next one. And in addition, I also, like, how do you find out that he's getting revived? How do you see Hank getting revived live? You know, it's possible that the auditor is connected with the machine and maybe he can see it. I don't really know. I think that is explained in Madness, the Nexus Madness stuff. But yeah, anyways, so back to freaking, you know, Deimos and Sanford. You know, they're fighting through this giant mall, which is kind of foreshadowed in Madness 5.5, but it's not that important. And eventually, they see this clothes shop, and they completely halt their mission to just drip out. They just have to. And keep in mind, while this is happening, Tricky and friggin' Hank are fighting. You know, Hank's on the train fighting for his life, and then meanwhile, like, Deimos is like, yo man, try on the suit, and Sanford's like, nah, I'm good, bro. Oh, well, yo, check out these sunglasses. Oh, hell yeah, I'm looking good. I'm gonna grow a face. I'm the only character in Madness with a face. And then Deimos tries on clothes, and he's like, oh damn, you look good. He's like, thanks, bro. And then Hank is just like fighting for his life on the friggin' like train. I don't know, I always found that funny. And eventually they leave and escape the mall via helicopter. All right. Back to the main stuff. In Madness 7, we go back to Hank, who, yeah, he got his ass beat by the demon Tricky. However, while getting absolutely hounded and freaking tortured by Tricky, because he wants to make him suffer, he's suddenly revived by the machine. Insert incorrect buzzer sound effect right here. I have reason to believe that this is probably the second time Tricky actually revives Hank. It's very likely because we actually see text. He's like, get up, and Hank's like, no! And then, you know, he forces him to get up, and he's like, knock it off. It's probably meant to be that Hank is getting revived by Tricky so then he can torture him more, and then obviously it gets from there. So just forget everything I say here. I totally messed it up. When I was writing the script, I just read about the machine. I'm like, oh, the machine is everything, guys. The machine's everything. But no, the machine is not everything. Again, that character comes up way later. We'll probably talk about him closer to 9.5 when we get to that area, and closer to 12 as well. So, but do keep him in mind, he is important, but not right now. With like a giant beam, a little electricity thing, and then goes into his most iconic form, the Consternation form, and he's like, Tricky, knock it off! And the entire animation he spends running from Tricky while fighting agents at the same time. We also see posters about how, I guess, like, they already just figured out that that's his new form and they already updated it. I don't know how they do this, but yeah, Hank, he's running, and eventually, he's like, at one point he shoots Tricky in the head, and we see an x-ray shot of the improbability drive. This is not the main one, rather this is the third one that I was talking about back in the, you know, like Madness 6.5. This drive is a portable one that allows Tricky to gain powers and stuff, and the main reason he's doing all this demon stuff. So yeah, anyways, Hank fights more and more, and he comes across this first mag agent of the series, Mag Agent Torture. These are a reoccurring enemy, and you'll see them every now and then, and they're kind of important, I guess. Yeah, Hank fights him, but is yeeted over to the neighboring building where he fights more again. And then eventually, he picks up a chainsaw, and then eventually finishes Mag Agent Torture. And then, you know, he gets ambushed by Tricky, and then Tricky throws him out the building, where I guess Jesus, like a freaking exfil camper from Tarkov, is just waiting there, and seeing these engineers try to fix this third drive from Tricky. And then Jesus impales Hank with a sword and then kills him. And Tricky's like, dude, what the hell? And then Jesus just shoots the third drive, breaking it and causing Tricky to go back into his normal form and dies. Meanwhile, a mysterious shadowy figure that you guys already know about because, you know, all that stuff earlier, is watching with 2 other MAG agents behind him. This is actually the first time that the Auditor shows up with regards to like release date order, and this is the first time we kind of really see that he's in the background the whole time. This is also the first time we see ATP engineers for that like one brief moment, you know, in release date order, even if we've already seen them, you know. Anyways, now you might be wondering, how are they making ATP engineers? Are you asking that? No, you're not. But you're lucky because we get to watch a whole animation on that. Yippee! All right, so I'm gonna merge like a bunch of different animations because they all kind of fit in this little area, and they all could technically like occur during Madness 8. I mean, only one of them is like that technicality, but I know for a fact 2 of them do. So let's start with Madness 7.5. It's pretty simple. Deimos and Sanford, you know, fighting through a building to stop the production and training of a new type of soldier, the ATP Soldats. We also see how they're trained. They're like Cyclops people, by the way, and they're being sent information from like this console into their brains, and they basically just blow up the console and then go away. And then Sanford also has like his like iconic hook, which will be his weapon choice for like a while. He always has his hook, except for like a little bit, but we'll talk about that later. And then, you know, Deimos suddenly gets a notification on like his phone, on his tablet, I don't really know what it is, that Hank has been killed. And also we get to see a screen about the different drives. The drives are simple. There's a main one, which is the one in Madness 8, and then we'll talk about that later, and then a secondary one that to this day is a complete mystery, and the third one that was destroyed by Jesus like just now. Now you also might be wondering, who the hell is sending them these updates and missions? Well, it's someone named Doc, who knows Sanford, Deimos, and Hank. It's implied that Doc and Hank even lived together at one point in a side, you know, animation called Dissenter FLA, which is about like, we just get to watch Doc fight a little bit. You know, I don't really know where that actually happens. It could be anywhere, but I thought it'd be important to explain it now. You know, or maybe it happens a little before Deadmos. I don't know. We'll talk about that one later, especially. Anyways, sometime after that, Sanford and Deimos also watch an experiment where these people see what happens when you take the hands away from like a Madness guy. So you know how their like hands are like disembodied, right? Well, like, what happens if you like yank them away? And so these people try it and shit hits the fan. And now this dude is like some reality bending brunt. He like goes insane and stuff. It's a freaking weird. It's a very freaky animation. You know, he goes insane and blows up. And most importantly, Sanford and Deimos are like watching, and they see this car, and they're like, damn, that's crazy. And then you see this car over here. That's the one they're going to use in Madness 9. Keep that in mind. Anyways, it also gives us an idea of like physiologically that like canonical Madness grunts aren't exactly humans. They're like literally, they have different anatomies. Nobody really knows how they work. Alright, on to Madness 8, which takes place literally right after 7, and also I guess you could say during 7.5, I guess. We get to follow Jesus, who is basically on a mission to restore the normality of Nevada, and we can see he can like flow and has this one ability like from the Titanfall people, like the Titanfall like, not agents, oh my god, I was about to say mag agents, friggin' the Titans, they have like this ability to like get a shield that absorbs bullets and then shoots them back. He has that ability. He also has telepathy, I don't really know how to say it, but you get the point. He's also going around and killing stuff, and you know, it's blah blah blah. He wants to basically stop the Auditor and destroy the drive, and the Auditor does not like this at all. So he infects them remotely, I guess, with like a virus. I don't know how he does it, but it works, and Jesus will vomit blood, and then as you watch the animation, you'll notice he gets a lot weaker. That shield ability that I was talking about gets weaker. His everything gets weaker. And so, you know, anyways, he eventually comes across like this cloning area, and that's how grunts are made in this universe, via cloning machines. So at least that explains something. And then Jesus is like, and then he just starts shooting it. And the Auditor, you know, he doesn't like this. And his mag agent friend tells him about it, and the Auditor is like, oh, I'm gonna go beat his ass. So Jesus decides to make his way to the Auditor's house now, and then he like, you know, they're fighting, and then he busts in, you know, kills mag agent, and then is attacked by the Auditor, who has like smoke abilities and can teleport and just make things disappear also, and appear, will. And, you know, we can see his powers in action, and despite getting beat up kind of bad by him, Jesus is still fighting and makes it up to the Auditor's office, where he tries to stop the improbability drive. However, the Auditor catches up with like a rocket launcher and just blows his ass up, and this ends up damaging the improbability drive, and Jesus obviously gets very hurt. And as a final last-ditch effort to make sure the Auditor ensures that the Auditor can't use the improbability drive, that the improbability drive can't be repaired, and that the Auditor is killed, he tries to like do this giant beam down onto Earth, which will destroy everything. and it's called, I guess, normality restoration. I don't really know what it's called. I mean, that's what the wiki calls it. But, you know, he tries to do that, and, you know, he dies himself. He kamikazes, basically. And, yeah, we'll see what happens later. This is, again, not really effective, though, because I'll explain stuff about it later. But, yeah, we'll just on to Madness 9. So, Madness 9 starts a little before when Jesus is in the Auditor's house. Right now, we're watching Deimos and Sanford trying to get, you know, Hank's body so they can restore it. So they use that one car from that one experiment episode that I was talking about, and they drive, they get ambushed, steal a truck, and then I think also Sanford's internet has like a hiccup because he just freezes. Oh my god, bro, had like, he lost his batteries died or something, DualShock controller. Anyways, I guess the restoration beam just like beams down, and so we get a good idea of when this takes place because we watch it. So yeah, that's when Madness 8 ends. We're watching Madness 9 now. And yeah, so Deimos starts texting and driving, which he should not be doing, and then sees that until the secondary drive is destroyed, they actually can't stop all the pandemonium and chaos. So they're like, oh shoot, alright, time to do that later. But first, let's revive Hank. So they get Hank's body, and then Deimos, you know, flips down his little like communicator thing, is like, yeah, Doc, we got this, because I guess they're talking, because he's definitely talking to someone. Anyways, meanwhile, Auditor over at, you know, his house, or what's left of it, he didn't die because he used his smoke abilities again, and he takes the halo off of Jesus, making him far more powerful. And we'll talk more about that later. But anyways, we get to watch Sanford and Deimos fight, and we get to learn who they kind of are, you know, not excluding, again, this came out way before the freaking 5.5 stuff, so, you know, this is kind of when we get to learn who they are, get a feel for them, in like, I guess, release date order wise. And it's an effective kind of character. It's actually really good at character building. You know, Sanford likes melee, he has his hook, and Deimos is like a mechanical and like a gun expert guy, and he's more techie. And because he's kind of a goofball too, you know. He tries scaring Sanford with like an engineer mask and goes rah, and then Sanford's like, yo, stop, we can't be doing that. And then, you know, in general, I think the ability to create characters and give them life from scratch, because mind you, again, first time that we've ever seen them, this would have been at least release date wise, his ability, you know, Crinkle's ability to create characters was just really well done. I think we just get to learn a lot about who they are. Meanwhile, Auditor just goes ahead and starts giving life to a new mag agent creation, because I guess he just really needs to do that. And he also possesses these engineers, which shows that he can possess people now with the power of the halo, I think. Anyways, Deimos, Sanford keep fighting, and eventually they get, you know, split up by the possessed people. And Deimos goes to this mag agent creator chamber and begins to revive Hank, but is unfortunately killed in the process. However, this is not the end of his story. It's a bummer though to see him go, but we'll see him way later. You know, he was a real one. Anyways, yeah, so Sanford's getting pinned down, and eventually, you know, he's good. And then, I guess we just cut to, like, the freaking Auditor, and we get to see a new form of Hank. It's, like, a really iconic scene, you know. He's, like, a little bit smaller than a mag agent, because, you know, if you think about it, his, like, revival process got cut short. He also has this, like, crustacean, slithery arm thing, and it looks pretty cool. Anyways, he defeats the new mag agent pretty easily, and then sticks with Sanford. And then, you know, Auditor's like, ah ha ha, I'm evil and scary, and then, you know, and the animation ends. I'd like to reiterate that, again, almost everything after 9, including 5.5, 6.5, 7.5, all of them, all have these character building moments, and I think it's an absolute standout of the series, and I think it only gets better. We will get to see more character-like moments, interactions, and humanity introduced, which if you don't know, kind of a sucker for that, but, you know, just thought I'd mention that. It will get better, and this is kind of the first time he really starts to do it. I think it's, like, very well done. Alright, so before we can go on to 10, even though these animations kind of came out after 10, or I think one of them actually, Deadmos came out before it, but 9.5 and Deadmos, we're going to need to cover 2 animations, those two. And I'll start with Deadmos because it will explain a couple of important things for later, and we know it does take place before 9.5, I think. Alright, so yeah, we'll start with Chase FLA. We basically open with a grunt who's going into this new world called the Other Place, which is like Purgatory, and it's basically where you go when you die, and it's warped around, you know, what else has happened in the series. It's kind of confusing. Each person has a slightly different thing happening to them when they go into this Purgatory, according to Crinkles, but, you know, I'm not going to bother talking about it. It's kind of confusing, and I can't really understand it too well. Just know that people die here, and it's been studied by a lot of scientists in the Madness world, and we see grunts doing some stuff, like flipping gravity and all that. We also see this ball, which is apparently something of importance and has been studied a lot, so yeah. Anyways, this grunt gets like a syringe and is about to inject this corpse before getting hit by some chains, which will be a reoccurring thing. We're going to see a lot of chains. And Deimos comes down, shoots some soldats, flips gravity, and then misses this portal where this chain came out of, and then falls. we continue by this one called Sacrifice.FLA by watching him basically keep falling, smokes, and then gets, yoinked by a chain, and then he enters some kind of like office with his jaw torn off, and then he goes back to fighting, enters the Madness 3 area, yeah, remember that, and then he also sees a version of Madness 3, Hank, that's in the ground, and upon touching him, he basically gets like visions of Tricky, Hank, and Jesus before getting decimated by more chains, Jesus. Anyways, then in Amnesis.FLA, he's pulled out into a new area where he sees basically Sanford getting shot by a Soldat. And when he enters the room, it resets, and Sanford walks out, and basically like it's like a time loop, it like reenacts like everything. But before Sanford would normally get shot, Deimos stops him, but then Sanford I guess just changes completely, and his face gets all messed up and weird stuff happens. In Powerless FLA, we continue this and we see how I guess the room gets messed up, and then Deimos falls down and gets yoinked by the crustacean arm again. The freaking arm, dude, I swear, it's so mysterious. Anyways, he gets put into a place that kinda looks like Madness 9, kinda. And, he sees an engineer who flickers, I guess, he switches between the possessed version and normal, probably reflecting how Deimos was killed. Again, these are like reflections on the character themselves, I think. Anyways, he kills him, then gets yoinked by the arm again, and finally, we get to watch Deadmos Rebuilt. I love this one a lot. We basically see where he ends up now, which is in a little box, and he gets transformed into Rock Deimos, or Rockmos, as some people call him. Basically, Deimos gets a bunch of rocks shoved into him, because he has all of these giant wounds, and he gets them over like this little mini-series. And he fights through a bunch of large mag-sized agents in the Purgatory area that aren't the same as normal agents. I don't know how to explain it, but we'll talk more about it later. But it's basically, I think they're like the people who inhabit Purgatory, and either Deimos is really, really small, or everyone is really, really big. Again, it could be part of how his Purgatory is created. It might have to do with his personality and stuff. But honestly, it's a fun animation. I really like this one a lot. Deimos dabs, and he's clearly enjoying his powers. He puts on sunglasses at one point. It's really cute and fun. I mean, not cute. It's actually really violent. Anyways, so he eventually meets this friendly grunt who's working with Doc, one of many people who are working with Doc, and they try to get a device hooked up to him to extract him out of Purgatory. But the grunt ends up getting like big, and I guess when you get big, like the other people, you just go crazy and get really hostile, and Deimos is unfortunately forced to kill him, and his extraction for now is cut short. And Deimos fights a bunch of people, and then eventually gets hit by this like thing, and then is extracted by Doc. You'll see the thing later, it's kind of important. But then a bunch of rocky kind of like you see rocks coming out of them, like these mag agents kind of come out, and then Doc and Deimos have to face off against them, and it cuts off. Again, this is important for many reasons, honestly, this animation in particular. We get to see Purgatory, how it's a recollection of the past, and how it also kind of depends on, like what it happens in there kind of depends per person, and it feeds on their fears and memories, like seeing your best friend die and watching the world go away and all that stuff. We also see how it's possible to revive people and bring people back, even though, I don't know, it's kind of different than Hank, because you're going to notice later what I mean. But, that this hell, I guess, is also under study. It's very, a lot of people are watching it closely. We see those grunts at the start are probably just a bunch of people who are working for scientists. But I don't get the other part, like the giant mag agents, which do actually show up later, and they are important. And how being big makes you go crazy and hate the people, because they're not fighting each other. They're fighting, Deimos. I don't know how it works. And I don't really get also, how, I guess this place is run by, the higher powers, kind of like a group that works above madness and are like gods. Because you see a bunch of posters that encourage people to stay down and stay in their place, and I'm really unsure what to think about it, but you get the idea of what this area is. Now onto 9.5. Okay, 9.5. This one is super confusing, and it's for a bunch of reasons in the later stuff. Anyways, 9.5 actually takes place basically right after 7 when Hank is killed, and it opens with Hank trying to get revived and extracted by Doc, but the process is stopped and unfortunately fails as the auditor tells him to basically just piss off. And Hank is currently in a new area, the other place, but it's not the same place that we saw Deimos in. It's more like a prison for I guess, I don't know, it's a prison. Anyways, we see this one grunt with weird markings on their face, and this is Hank. And we can kind of see the critical injuries and where they were, his jaw and the top of his head when he was shot and things like that. Anyways, this grunt suddenly, I guess, just turns into Hank from Madness 7, and people begin to attack him. Cool little thing, by the way, is Hank makes fun of this Soldat for having only one eye, and then points at his own and stuff. Anyways, yeah. Hank sees a version of Tricky appear from a grunt with markings as well, and they fight for a little bit, and then Tricky, I guess, gets defeated temporarily. Tricky is also dead, and I guess it makes sense that he's here. Anyways, he kills Tricky and then moves on and begins fighting and stuff like that, trying to get out of here. More fighting, more fighting, more fighting, and then we see these new people, mag agents, but they're different. These are retainers, and as you can see in this encounter, Hank gets like completely dominated by one because he can teleport and he's kind of overpowered. And so yeah, these retainers, I'll explain it now, exist to retain people, retain dangerous people. Specifically Hank, to keep Hank from getting out and escaping again. They don't want him to get revived. So anyways, yeah. Hank gets controlled by one, and he can't shoot it during like a fight, and then he ends up missing a bunch. And the retainer basically like beats him up pretty bad and holds him down. We see all these spikes come up to him, and then we actually so a little fun fact, we actually get to see a little bit of Hank's metal jaw, just a fun little thing. And also a post that warns people about avoiding retention, but it's hard to make out what it says. And so it kind of ends off on this cliffhanger. All right, so 9.5 part 2 is kind of confusing, like really confusing. So yeah. We open with, classic crustacean arm and, I guess the, inner workings of Purgatory, and it ends up, getting absolutely freaking destroyed. It's trying to probably get in and revive Hank. And then we also see text show up and say that Madness 7 Hank had been retained, meaning he got beat off screen again, Madness 6. Kind of funny. Anyways, there's also apparently one unretained Hank. I don't know what that means. What does that mean? All right, so let's find out. Okay, so we see people chilling. Is that Madness 6 Hank? How is that possible? What is this sorcery? What is this dark magic? Okay, so basically Crinkles explains in a stream clip that I found while looking on the Madness wiki trying to find answers or I think I looked it up and I saw something on Reddit. I don't know. But essentially, when Hank dies, the body, I guess there are a bunch of souls that it's so hard to explain. When Hank dies, part of him, I guess there are multiple Hanks. And when he dies, when he's revived, another Hank soul goes into that body. Or something like that. So essentially, there's a bunch of Hank souls just chilling in the other place, and there's one main Hank body, if you get what I'm saying. So when he dies, he gets revived into a new brain. So, I guess this is why, sometimes we see different personalities, Hank 6, Hank, Antipathy Hank, is super aggressive for no reason. We don't even know how many Hanks there are, dude. There could be a bunch. Is there one created after each death? Is there a set amount? Is it there only 2? Nobody can really kind of answer that. This is kind of still a mystery now. We're gonna figure that out later, hopefully. So yeah. Anyways, for a majority of the animation, we just get to watch Hank 6 go around killing people. We see how absolutely brutal and angered, I guess, this version of Hank is, using heads as weapon and kicking people into trash and stuff. And kind of fits the MO if you know Antipathy Hank. He's pretty aggressive. Anyways, while fighting, Tricky comes back looking like the throat goat, and then while fighting Hank, he's basically able to resummon the demon Tricky from a while ago, but as a skeletal version. I don't know if is that a different version of Tricky 2 or what's going on. I don't even know anymore. So I guess Tricky is also against the retainers too, interestingly, because you can see him fight one off a little bit, meaning, is he working for the agency against Hank Wimbledon? I don't know. What's going on? I can't even figure out the freaking multiple Hank stuff. It's freaking at the MCU, multiple universes and stuff. Whatever. God, it's very confusing. Anyways, so another interesting thing is that we'll also see grunts with their skin torn off, showing how they got injured before dying. But then what about the grunts who are fine? Honestly, if I had to guess, maybe it's that these grunts who are messed up got killed when they were here rather than in the actual world, Nevada. And Crinkles did say that according to the Madness wiki at least, because I can't actually find the actual clip, so I don't know what he actually says, quote, if someone dies in the other place, their quote abstractions will keep breaking down, which will generate another story somewhere else. Quite frankly, I have no clue what that even means. I really don't know. Anyways, fighting. Hank gets lost, I guess. Something happens to him. And Doc is tracking a Hank. He's basically trying to get a Hank soul into the Hank body of Hank, who's currently probably getting revived. You know how it goes in Madness 9. Anyways, he just kind of coin tosses it and just chooses between 2. It's interesting though, because we also see a bunch of other ones, meaning that there probably is one Hank for every version from Madness 1 to 7 from up until now. You get what I'm saying. Anyways, yeah, he chooses between Hank 6 or 7, and we'll talk about that later, why he chooses between those two. More fighting. Tricky then kills a retainer, which frees Hank 7, who was retained this whole time. He got, I don't know how he was retained, if he was in a box or a cell, or if he died and then comes back to life. Anyways, he does a bit of killing himself, and then we see Hank 6 back, and he's killing Demon Tricky, blah blah blah. They kill Tricky, I think, maybe, and then eventually the two fight. And if these are like the same people, if they're the same, like if they're working for the same cause, I have no clue why they're fighting at all, honestly. And you know, I guess Hank 6 gets taken away, and we cut to the revival process of like inside the little cell from Madness 9, which implies that when Hank 7 died, when Jesus shot that specific Hank, that Hank did not get revived. It was Hank 6 in a new body. And I guess it's just a very interesting like concept, like Hank's body is a vessel for all the other Hanks, I guess. Maybe there's only 2, and both just really want to save the world. I don't know. And not to mention, does that mean that Doc works with the freaking like the machine to revive people or something like that? And has he been doing this whole time? There's so many freaking questions, and honestly, it's just confusing. We don't even know for certain if Hank comes back a new person every time, or if it's just different souls inhibiting the same vessel or something. And overall, this just adds a lot of mysteries. Just, I guess keep this in mind for Madness 13 when that comes out. I don't know. Okay. We finished the confusing ass shit. Let's go back to Madness 10. Nice, simple story. Honestly, at least compared to everything else that I've had to describe. It picks up right after Madness 9. Sanford and Hank are basically fighting the Auditor, and lightning stuff is happening too. You'll notice that as well. And Hank is able to basically grow an arm after having it ripped off. And he now has like the power of the Halo with like lightning punches, kind of like that restoration beam. Anyways, fighting, you know, it's pretty fun. And apparently mag agentification, whatever you call it, I don't know, magification, is being done on normal grunts and normal people now, because you can see, I guess, advertisements in the back saying, hey, become a mag too. Anyways, during one fight with that big mag agent, Sanford loses his hook. This is truly disheartening, probably one of the saddest moments in the series. It's like divorce. It's literally like divorce. Honestly, it really is. It's like you see them separate. Anyways, during a fight, the Auditor also apparently needs more power to keep himself like strong and sustainable, as the Halo, I think, drains his powers. In doing so, on the final fight, he basically like accidentally, I guess, absorbs Tricky's body, which has just been sitting in that one spot since Madness 7. And upon absorbing it, Tricky enters the Auditor, not in the weird way, and I think they begin to like merge or something. Maybe Tricky takes over his body. I don't really know. And then Tricky's madness and the Auditor's powers, I guess, like merge, and it's not a good combo, and it's bad enough that Sanford and Hank are like, all right, let's go, little dude, let's go. And yeah, that's Madness 11. All right, so Madness 11. This, where like you see this little red dude, this is the Auditor's hell. This is, I think, Purgatory-ish. I don't really know, but what I think he's trying to do, because you're probably going to see him break out of this like little wall thing, that is him basically breaking out of hell. I don't know how he does that. And whatever this wall is, it's most likely representative of like the barrier between hell and earth. Kind of like the Sanzu River in Japanese mythology, River of Styx. You know, there are a ton of rivers in freaking mythology. I have no clue why. This is just one of many, I guess. So yeah. Anyways, we cut back to Nevada, and we see that skeletons are showing up now. Most likely from Tricky's ability to summon clones now that he has the Halo, and he's also like super evil. And Tricky is, yeah, it's bad. And oh, Tricky, freaking Demon Tricky's back, dude. And yeah, the two fight the Tricky and end up getting sent to hell forcefully. And you know, they fight for their lives, and you know, they're told to leave, and so they leave and then get turned into mist, I think. I don't know how the hell this works, and this is like the only time it happens. But either way, they get split up. Hank meets a damaged Auditor, probably, you know, weakened from everything, because that's why he got all the cracks on him, and ends up, like, impaling him and then sending him to another place. Sanford is having to survive on his own, completely isolated, while Tricky just totally messes with him, like, changing gravity and freaking him out and stuff. And, you know, it's pretty clear Sanford is starting to crack under the stress. Anyways, Tricky eventually hits Sanford really far, and Sanford silently screams in pain, and now his fear is very clear. Sanford is scared. He doesn't have anyone anymore. No Hank, no Deimos. He's probably exhausted. I mean, yeah, he's been fighting for maybe an hour total, or maybe like 30 minutes, 15 minutes, but he's probably really tired. Eventually, friggin' Tricky pulls out like an M60 and is flying, and it's a throwback to Madness 3. Ooh, that's cute. And, yeah. That happens, and you know, it seems really like that. Like, Sanford is super desperate, and I guess Hank just comes out of nowhere, and I guess he has a new arm because it got ripped off again, and he saves Hank by basically beating up Tricky a bit, and now he has a little bit of Jesus's powers, I guess, too, like telepathy and stuff. I don't really even know how this happens, but Hank also slaps him really far, and while Sanford's like, oh, thank God, nothing can get worse, freaking Hank comes out of nowhere and just like freaking gets nailed, and it's like, bro, poor Sanford, he can't catch a break. Anyways, more fighting, more fighting, more fighting, and our protagonists eventually fight this like giant Giga Tricky, a Mag Tricky, I guess, with like a big mask. But as the fight goes on, I guess Hank is just given a huge gun and sword. It's like does this little like, it like freezes everything. It's like violence required, violence acquired. I don't know why this happens, but most likely it's from Doc, maybe, considering there's like code on the screen, or maybe from the machine, I don't know. But Hank keeps fighting Tricky until they basically, he like hits Tricky so hard because they're at the wall of hell that they bust out of hell, and Tricky is finally stopped once more, and the Auditor is able to take his halo back. And I'm like 90% sure that Hank and Sanford are dead. You can see their bodies. I don't know what happened to them, but something did. And I think this episode perfectly shows also how exhausted Sanford is getting. And I mean, like at one point you can literally see Hank just like go like, okay, move out the way, dude. I'll take care of this little bro. And it's like, you know, it's kind of funny, but also kind of sad because I kind of feel for Sanford too. Okay, so Madness 12 is kind of a little confusing-ish. It'll be fun. So anyways, we start with Sanford, most likely in Purgatory after getting killed, is getting taken out by a chain, kind of like Deimos a while ago, and is most likely being saved by Doc, but unfortunately that is cut short really randomly, so Sanford is essentially forced to fend for himself. He fights and he fights it. Oh, hey, wait, it's those big rock guys. Interestingly, you know, when the rock agent has their head open, you'll watch it, you can see like a little shriveled up head in it. It looks like a raisin. I don't even know what this could imply, but it's something that should be noted, I guess. Anyways, Sanford is fighting, and we cut to Doc, who is most likely bringing up Sanford, or was, I guess. Now he has to stop. I guess he like friggin' Minecrafted drilled through Earth. I don't know how he opens up holes to hell like this, but anyways, he basically gets a little report, and we see that Hank is dead. And his, quote, charter is either changed or revoked, most likely by the machine from what I theorized, and it's either changed to saving Nevada or revoked, and he no longer can save Nevada. I wish I could tell you more information, but we lack a lot of information about this whole thing, again, because this is a Sanford-centric, I guess, episode, if you want to call it that. Anyways, cut back to Sanford. Apparently, the Auditor is trying to infect and control Sanford, but Sanford resists and fights back, but he's pretty scared. And also, at last, he picks up a hook and is reunited at last. Yippee! Also, anyways, more fighting, and he's also being chased by the Auditor, who is like a shadowy apparition trying to mind control him, and you'll see that a bunch. Anyways, we also get to cut to a driving car, and we also see someone talking to Doc, who's basically, Doc is like on the phone, like, oh my god, where's Hank's body? What's going on? Gotta get it back. And we also see a cigarette in their mouth. That means it can only be one person. Deimos is back as the Rock. Anyways, he's hopefully gonna help. Cut back to Sanford, who's fighting, and then something very interesting happens. Two of those rock agents, like, grab onto him and try to start splitting him apart, and suddenly this just wrath and anger comes out as one of them gouges his eyes out. It gouges Sanford's eyes out, and now he doesn't have sunglasses anymore, boo womp. And suddenly, out of nowhere, I guess he just gains superpowers, like insane superhuman strength, and is able to even float a little bit, and he starts beating the crap out of the two rock agents, and it's clear he has reached his breaking point, and somehow, I guess, his anger got to like a point where he just became mega strong. Anyways, he probably talks with like Doc on this little like computer or camera thing before running away from the Auditor again. Hello, also forgot to mention that we also see how this other place is also known as the Employee Substrata as described by Doc, as you can see on this like little freeze frame here. And also, we can see that it's like called the Occurrent. The Occurrent, I have no clue what that means. We'll talk about it actually later. It comes up near the end. And we also get to learn a little bit about how like anchoring and reviving works, and how to revive someone you need to like correspond their location between different dimensions. Just thought I'd mention this. Back to the video. Then he gets hit with like, remember that little button thing that hits Deimos that one time? Well, it hits him, and he's most likely resurrected again. The Auditor is pissed and furious about this, and we get to cut to Deimos, who picks up Sanford for the first time in probably, well, if you really think about it, it's only been like 20 minutes, and in like the Madness universe, it's probably only been like 30-20 minutes. So they get to reunite again, and it cuts, the animation kind of goes to this scene where we get to watch how everyone is recovered except Hank, because nobody really knows what's up with him, but then tells us something interesting. One, that Sanford had been resurrected without dying. I don't know what that means, and the Auditor is eschewed decorum, I guess, and hunting Nevada, and the quote occurrent lines are converging. I don't know what this means, honestly. The Sanford thing is already confusing because I thought he died. Didn't he die in Madness 11? Maybe he didn't. I don't know what's going on, but you know, that's everything there is that I can really explain with this. Hopefully, you know, we learn a lot more in Madness 13, maybe with a 0.5 or something. I don't know. I really want to know what's going on with the multiple Hank situation. And if I really had to guess, though, with this whole like a current line thing, I just want to talk about it briefly. It most likely refers to the collisions maybe of like dimensions and stuff, like, you know, Purgatory and real life. But I'm just bullshitting. I have no clue if that's true or not. Honestly, as I conclude this video, I want to say two things. I'm so sorry if this video is all over the place. I've recorded this like 30 times now. This is a 50-minute recording, mind you. I have done this like what feels like multiple times, and this is probably my best take. So, and I really want to make this video, so, you know, this is probably the best it will get. Again, I've been using this channel to try and really work on my public speaking skills. I know I stutter a lot, and I'm really trying to work on that. It's just something I've always struggled with. You know, I went to speech therapy for a while because of it. Speech therapy in general for other things, but that was like years and years ago. And the other thing is, if you really think about it, Madness 1 through 4 are like days apart, but like everything from 5 to 12 is over the course of like 45 minutes, maybe an hour if you really think about it, and that's insane. It's probably why Sanford was getting so scared and tired by Madness 11 before snapping and stuff. And also the lore has gotten a lot more complicated, and we're still figuring things out. And you know, it's really interesting if you watch the series yourself. You get to see it go from this fun, lighthearted, and over-the-top series about violence into its own like sci-fi fantasy universe, and it's super cool to watch. I still cannot wrap my head around, you know, the whole 9.5 thing exactly, and I really don't know what a current lines are. You know, the story is constantly changing though, and especially when Crinkle helps out explain things. And hopefully, yeah, we just get to learn more next year and this year. You know, the script is long, and this video was definitely harder to make than all of the past ones, so I really just do hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time.